the day the girl transmigrated into the novel. She became the male lead's mother who died young. In the original story, her husband was a notorious tyrant. He would slaughter her entire family and destroy her life. She vows to change the ending of the story, but the moment she meets the emperor, she freezes. In this cold-blooded ruler's eyes, there's nothing but obsession and madness. A long sword dripping with blood, a man lying in a pool of crimson. Even in his final moments, he shouts unreasonable demands for the mithril mines. The nobles watch silently, their hearts filled with terror. The emperor mocks his overconfidence and declares war on Begonia. The girl slowly opens her eyes, exhausted from the endless cycle of suffering in her dreams. She murmurs, hoping someone can end this annoying nightmare. But when she gets up, she finds the room luxurious yet unfamiliar. Unease rises within her. This isn't her world at all. The maid frantically asks about her condition, blurting out the word princess. She freezes instantly. What princess? She immediately rushes to the mirror. She sees her golden hair and blue eyes clearly. She can't help but be captivated by this unfamiliar beauty. A crowd rushes in, calling out the name Charleone. She confirms her identity repeatedly, breaking down as she realizes she's become a character in the book. Her mother approaches with concern, so she pretends to have amnesia. She quietly asks to hear her identity again, trying to mask her inner chaos. The queen explains she's the only princess of Linoa Palace, Charleone Rose Linoa. She finally falls to her knees, accepting this cruel reality. She recalls the nights she stayed up reading the novel. The book told of how the male lead's pain was healed by the female lead, and now she's become the male lead's mother, a tragic character meant to highlight his suffering. The male lead's father, the emperor, conducted bloody purges to consolidate his power. Within 3 years, he conquered all neighboring countries and slaughtered nobles. While destroying the kingdom, the emperor noticed Charleone trembling behind the bed curtains. He fell for her at first sight and took her back to the empire as a trophy. Charleone was forced to marry a demon. After giving birth to the male lead, the crown prince, she had a mental breakdown and eventually took her own life. She clutches her head in despair. Why did she have to possess this unfortunate character? At that moment, her mother's voice reaches her, asking with concern about her condition. She then explains how Charleone suddenly fainted during dinner. The protagonist feels relieved to discover that Charleone's family atmosphere is warm. She silently prays for more peaceful days like this, not wanting to experience the cruelty of war. The king strokes her head and says he must attend an emergency meeting. Because the Fritas Empire has declared war on Begonia, she breaks down again. The war has already begun? Urgency surges within her. She must do something to stop this disaster. A bespectacled teacher is assigned to tutor her, marveling that she's finally studying diligently. She makes up her mind. Since she can't go back, she'll use every method to deal with the war. After briefly explaining the situation of each nation, the teacher begins discussing diplomatic relations. He shows her a type of mithril ore that can enhance the strength of weapons and magical tools, allowing her to witness the magic of the book's world with her own eyes. Begonia's monopoly of the mines caused relations with other nations to break down. She lowers her head in thought, analyzing how the emperor's ascension coincides with the mine's discovery. She suspects someone is scheming behind the scenes, slowly triggering problems. A month later, the teacher places a pile of books in front of her. She timidly suggests having afternoon tea with her brother, craving a brief rest. Walking outside, she sighs that studying is too hard. At that moment, a handsome, long-haired man bows to her, addressing her as Your Highness. Her heart flutters at this beautiful man, but then he asks if she remembers him. The maid quietly reminds her this is the Knight Commander, Arian Belrath. She apologizes, saying she can't recognize people after her amnesia, but he bites his lower lip, seeming unhappy. She quickly takes her leave. Yet Arian keeps watching her retreating figure. She wonders, why is he looking at me like that? When she tells her brother, he calmly says she and Arian are dating. She's completely stunned, confusion and unease flooding through her. Her brother mentions casually that this is already her fourth lover. There are always many men around her who are quickly cast aside. She's surprised at how liberal this country's views on romance are. Her brother recalls she said it was just for fun with Arian. If he keeps pestering her, her brother will handle it as usual. At that moment, a servant hurriedly announces the king's urgent summons. Reportedly, the empire has completely conquered Begonia within a month. The ministers begin to realize this war isn't simple. She muses that the emperor must meet Charleone in person. This is the only way to stop the war from spreading. She enters the council chamber feeling the heavy atmosphere. Her brother informs her that in 2 weeks he'll represent the king on a diplomatic mission to the empire. He's invited to attend a victory banquet celebrating the triumph. She immediately realizes this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She must personally determine whether to stop the war or prepare for battle. She firmly requests to accompany him. Smiling, she explains she wants to use this chance to see the world. The maid searches through the wardrobe for clothes received 2 years ago. She doesn't understand why the princess insists on wearing Tualan clothing. She explains that not revealing her identity as princess is the king's condition for letting her go. She's immediately drawn to Tualan's traditional attire. She gives the maid a grateful smile. The maid is delighted to be able to talk with her like this again. She silently vows to repay the maid once she stops the war. She also quietly asks for a maid's outfit to be prepared as backup. On the day of departure, even in a maid's outfit, Her noble bearing is hard to conceal. Her brother jokes that this disguise won't fool anyone. Facing the tall carriage, she's momentarily at a loss. Arene suddenly kneels on one knee and extends his hand to help her. Her brother explains he volunteered for guard duty. She's surprised by his lingering feelings. She gently places her hand on his but warns him not to overstep. After boarding the carriage, she decides to ignore his advances. Along the way, she can't help imagining what the Emperor really looks like. If he's reasonable, she'll proceed with the original plan. If he's a tyrant, she'll have to think of another way to deal with him. The convoy soon arrives at the magnificent imperial palace. The red-haired emperor secretly observes the guests from upstairs. Charleone takes the opportunity to slip out of the banquet and explore. She's drawn to a greenhouse filled with exotic flowers and plants. She gently touches the lilies, admiring the emperor's refined taste. She recalls asking the maid about the emperor's appearance. A fierce and menacing image surfaces in her mind, but her own imagination terrifies her. The maid also believed the emperor must look terrifying. Snapping back to reality, she suddenly senses a gaze and looks up sharply. A red-haired man is staring intently at her. Those deep eyes make her heart skip a beat. Everyone says he's a bloodthirsty tyrant, but his kindness toward commoners gives her hope. As long as he's a wise ruler, perhaps everything can still go according to plan. But she never expected the emperor's face to be exactly her type. The man's deep voice asks about her identity. Seeing she doesn't answer, he moves closer. Even through her veil, she can feel his breath. She jolts awake and steps back, avoiding the kiss. In her panic, she only remembers not to reveal her face. As she turns to flee, her skirt sweeps out in a determined arc. Yet the emperor's gaze follows her retreating figure for a long time. At the banquet, the Prince of Tualan comes to offer congratulations. But the emperor scans the entire hall absent-mindedly. Finally, he spots her again in that corner. The moment their eyes meet, she's like a startled rabbit. Then she disappears from his sight once more. Just as he's about to chase after her, his subordinate appears to report urgent military matters. She runs all the way to the forest before daring to stop and catch her breath. She regrets this unexpected encounter with the emperor. Her future plans will likely be hindered. Just as she's feeling vexed, a dark figure drops from above. The assassin's dagger lunges straight for her face. She freezes in place, unable to move. Another throwing knife strikes down the weapon just in time. The emperor pulls her into his arms, gently reproaching her for making him search the entire venue. At that moment, the assassin's accomplices appear. Begonia's avengers surround them. He pushes her to a safe distance. With a backhand strike, he cuts down the assassin attacking from behind. Blood traces a glaring arc through the air. She recalls those terrifying rumors again. The tyrant who hangs nobles' heads outside the palace. Cruelty that matches the novel's description perfectly. The guards who arrive begin clearing the scene. He walks toward her, trembling in the corner, puzzled by her terror. He reaches out to cover her tear-filled eyes, but he smears blood all over her face. She curses him as a madman in her mind. He chuckles at the bloodstains on her skirt, saying she's like an injured fawn. Then he lowers his head and plants a gentle kiss on her forehead. Next, he says he'll take her back to tend to her wounds. Without a word, he hoists her over his shoulder. She realizes in despair that she's become a trophy. All her plans have spiraled out of control. The door is thrust open as the man carries the unconscious girl into the palace. The butler asks in surprise about the identity of the woman in His Majesty's arms. The emperor proudly boasts about the precious prey he found in the wilderness. Her injured, curled-up form looks exactly like a frightened fawn. The emperor's gaze never leaves the woman beside him. He suddenly asks about the butler's grandson's pet. Hearing it's a cat, he becomes even more interested. The butler describes how the cat was very wary, hiding under the bed for 2 whole days. The emperor has an epiphany. No wonder she always wants to escape. After speaking, he stands up and leaves the room without looking back. Charleone stands there stunned, not understanding why he suddenly left. Does he see her as a cat? She worries that her exposed identity will trigger a diplomatic crisis among 3 nations. She must persuade the emperor to let her return home before things get worse. However, 3 hours pass and no one pays her any attention. She decides to find a way to escape the room herself. She moves a box to stand on, barely able to reach the window. She wonders if she can safely jump from this height. Just as she hesitates, the door suddenly opens. The emperor sneers, saying she has quite the nerve to try escaping. He reminds her that moving the safe beneath her feet will trigger an alarm. Only then does she realize it's not ordinary furniture. He extends his hand, gently calling her little fawn, coaxing her down from the dangerous spot. Charleone stares at him quietly, filled with discontent. She demands to know why he left her here alone. The emperor explains he saw she was scared and wanted to give her some breathing room. It seems he needn't have bothered. She's about to take the opportunity to ask to go home, but he speaks first, saying they'll be together forever. These words leave her completely stunned. He pulls her forcefully into his embrace, declaring that from now on, he'll always stay by her side. As he speaks, he leans in to kiss her again. She hastily pushes him away, emphasizing that many people are waiting for her to return. She promises to visit officially after returning home. The emperor sneers, not believing her promise. He thinks once she goes back, she'll never come again. Charleone can only give up. She carefully observes the man beside her. He's clearly the tyrant from the novel who conquers everywhere, yet he feels different from what she imagined. She musters the courage to ask why he smeared blood on her face yesterday. The emperor explains he just saw she was scared and wanted her to close her eyes. She angrily points out that it was a dead person's blood. He strokes her hand apologetically, promising to use his own blood next time. She's completely speechless, saying any blood is terrifying. She suddenly realizes he might want to use blood to leave a mark. He admits it frankly and gets up to fetch a dinner knife. Since the bloodstains have been washed away, he needs to apply them again. She hurriedly grabs him to stop this insane behavior. She says there are other ways to leave a mark. She removes her bracelet and hands it to him as a substitute. But he says this is the opposite of what he had in mind. She says next time he can give her something instead. He gently kisses her wrist. Looking up, he tenderly asks her name. She hastily makes up the false name, Leonie. He introduces himself as Gasikov. She worries inwardly that the plot has been disrupted and doesn't know how the future will unfold. The next morning, Charleone resolves that she must escape. She softly tells the emperor that many people are waiting for her. Gasikov only kisses her forehead tenderly. He says he'll visit officially later and must attend a meeting now. After speaking, he closes the door and leaves. Charleone stands there stunned, once again losing the chance to make her request. The MANWHA delegation returns home tomorrow. She must act today. Just as she's anxious, she suddenly hears the sound of shattering glass. She turns to see Ariane appearing outside the broken window. After being rescued by him, she immediately runs to her waiting brother. The siblings embrace tightly, and she finally feels safe. Ariane admits that if he hadn't found her today, he would have demanded the Empire investigate this matter publicly. She feels both frightened and moved. Understanding this would give the Empire a pretext for war. Yet knowing this, they were still willing to risk it for her. Back in safety, her brother begins asking what happened, why she wore tulle formal wear as a maid. She regrets inwardly that she originally wanted to cover her face to avoid trouble, afraid the Emperor would be captivated by her like in the original story. Her brother presses on, asking where exactly she's been these past few days. She thinks if she says the Emperor likes her and kept her locked up, her brother will definitely realize how serious this is. She finally admits the Emperor said he likes her. She explained she wore foreign attire for fear of diplomatic issues and couldn't notify them. Her brother angrily asks why she had to sneak out. She can only honestly admit she was too curious about what the Emperor was really like, but afraid the Emperor would be captivated by her beauty. She chose veiled clothing, but she never expected the Emperor to fall for her just by seeing her eyes. Her brother sighs helplessly. Even if the Emperor likes her, he imprisoned her, especially since the Emperor thinks she's a Tualan noble, which is a huge insult to that country. Inviting them to a victory banquet only to mock them like this. He doesn't take other countries seriously at all. Charleone asks the others to leave so they can talk privately. She asks her brother if the Empire is sowing discord among nations. Her brother says more than half support the unreasonable treaty. He thinks half of them are probably spies. Lainoa is a weak country ruled by nobles. The Empire might attack them. She lowers her eyes and apologizes for not thinking things through, although she said she'd visit again. If the Emperor discovers her escape, who knows how he'll react. She suggests requesting another visit as soon as possible. Her brother covers his face, saying this is going as a hostage, but she admits she seems to like the Emperor too. Her brother looks up in disbelief. She says although she's not sure, she feels he's not a demon who enjoys killing. Embarrassed, she says she doesn't dislike the Emperor and wants to persuade him. After returning to the kingdom, they explain the situation to the king. The king is shocked that the Emperor likes Charleone and wants to take her as a concubine. She hastily denies it's not what he thinks. She honestly doesn't know how the Emperor came to like her either. The king asks worriedly what to do about her feelings. Thinking of the Emperor's face, she says quietly that she hopes he'll be happy. At that moment, the door is thrust open. A servant urgently reports that Fritas has declared war on Tualan. A few days later, Charleone anxiously asks if her request to visit was delivered, but the servant brings devastating news. The Emperor rejected her request and immediately launched a war. She can't believe it. Something must have gone wrong. She urgently asks if they used the false name Leonie. When she learns they used her real name, she's completely devastated. The Empire's next target has suddenly changed. Could he have changed plans to capture her, or did her escape anger him? At this point, they receive a battle report that the two countries might negotiate. The king guesses the negotiations might involve Charleone. Blaming herself, Charleone proposes going to Tualan to persuade the Emperor. The king actually tells her to prepare to depart for Tualan. Her brother shouts urgently that she absolutely must not. The king looks at her with worry, telling her she must persuade the Emperor. Her brother leaves in anger, finding this completely unreasonable. The king pats her head, relieved he can help his daughter deal with the aftermath. Charleone leans into her father's embrace sadly. She asks how much damage this will cause Lainoa. The king holds her, telling her not to blame herself anymore. Soon she's sitting in a carriage heading to Tualan, looking at the scenery outside. The calm atmosphere shows no signs of pre-war tension. Even stranger, the king invited her to afternoon tea. Irene escorts her into the palace. The guards demand they lay down their weapons and only 5 people can enter. Irene notices ambushes all around. He whispers for her to stay close to him. She nods seriously and bows upon seeing the king. The king enthusiastically invites her to enjoy the refreshments. She's filled with doubt, not knowing his intentions. The king says he's heard she wants to persuade the emperor to stop the war. She apologizes for causing trouble, but the king says he doesn't blame her. He laughs, saying he's pleased a blessing has walked right to him. The next second, they're completely surrounded. Charlione remains calm, solemnly stating her purpose. But the current situation suggests they want war. The king admits he wants her as a hostage and urges them to surrender. Seeing the other side draw weapons, Arian tenses up. But Charlione suddenly orders Arian to surrender. The king laughs heartily and orders them imprisoned. Only now does Charlione realize Tualan has long been prepared to fight the empire. She's puzzled where their confidence to win comes from. Suddenly, it hits her. She realizes the critical issue. The emperor changed his original plans because of her. He's not the fully prepared emperor from the original story. At this moment, she thinks they're doomed. She can't even be sure if the empire can win. After being locked in a room, Charlione tilts her head back and sighs that the plot differs too much from the original. Just then, there's a knock at the door. She thinks it's a servant, but opening it, she sees a man from Tualan. He leans against the doorframe and says teasingly that she's becoming more beautiful. She apologizes, saying she can't remember people from before her amnesia. He mentions with displeasure that he once sent her formal wear. Only then does she realize he's the prince who sent the clothing. The prince laughs, saying they've been waiting for the empire to find an absurd reason for war. But the claim that the emperor started a war for her is still too outrageous. No woman, however beautiful, is worth an emperor starting a war over. Yet Lainoa sent a huge compensation for this. This makes him believe the emperor might truly be coming for her. She resolves not to let her value as a hostage increase further. So she makes the excuse that she impersonated a noble and angered the emperor. In fear, she fled back to Lainoa, making the emperor lose face. The prince doesn't believe her story, but he's still happy to receive the compensation. He then remarks that Charlione's demeanor is different from before. This has renewed his interest in her, and he states they're not afraid of the empire's attack at all, because recently they discovered something amazing. She asks what makes them so confident. After hesitating, the prince decides to reveal this secret. He whispers the words ancient magical weapons. Her expression changes instantly as she realizes the gravity. If they can truly counter the empire, confidence is indeed warranted. At this point, the prince suddenly proposes waiving the compensation. He holds up 2 fingers and states 2 conditions. First, marry him. Then make Lainoa a vassal state. She widens her eyes, saying she came to stop the war. The prince laughs that she still thinks she can stop the war. He urges her to abandon her illusions and marry him quickly, making the emperor into a shameless person who steals another man's wife. She can no longer tolerate this. She grabs a pillow and hurls it at this lunatic. She angrily demands she didn't come to hear his nonsense. The prince dodges, clutching his head, asking if she's lost her mind. Looking down at him, she admits she has indeed lost it. The frightened prince flees the room. She slams the door shut. Finally, she's gotten rid of him. She sighs inwardly that dealing with lunatics is exhausting. At that moment, a masked figure outside looks around furtively. Seeing the room the prince left, he follows. He knocks gently on her door and removes his mask, introducing himself as Lucas, a knight sent by the emperor on a mission. She looks at him in surprise. This is a spy? A week ago, a servant hurriedly reported that Miss Leone had disappeared. Gasikov springs to his feet, his eyes flashing darkly. Leon stays behind alone to report her true identity. Charlione is actually the princess of Lainoa. The delegation will leave the empire today to return home. The butler suggests waiting for the princess to visit officially, but he says he doesn't want her out of his sight for even a moment. He'd rather go fetch her himself than wait passively. A few days later, they receive Charlione's letter. The butler suggests making her his partner would be more appropriate. His eyes light up. That's an excellent idea. He orders the letter rejected. He'll personally welcome the empress. The butler reminds him that a proposal requires a gift to be proper. He immediately selects the nearest country, Tualan, as the gift. He suddenly remembers she hates seeing blood the most. He worries a bloody gift will make her reject him. The butler suggests with a smile to present the entire country intact. They immediately order the departure. On horseback, he asks about Tualan's trump card. It turns out to be ancient magical weapons discovered by the previous emperor. At this moment, the knight receives news that Charlione has already gone to Tualan. Even at full speed, they can't arrive before her. Gasikov immediately orders the spy to approach first and protect her. 4 days later, troops arrive at the gates, and the enemy pretends to welcome them. He sneers and invites them to display the ancient weapons. The king of Tualan confidently orders them to fire, but it triggers a violent explosion in their own camp. Amid the flames, he calmly asks if it's over. The enemy is shocked their weapons have been switched. Gasikov unhurriedly announces he's brought 50 improved versions. The king of Tualan, terrified, kneels and begs to negotiate. He agrees to negotiate with a cold laugh, but the attack continues. He walks steadily through the barrier surrounded by flames. The enemy kneels and asks what he wants to stop the war. Gasikov demands he hand over the entire kingdom, but the king would rather die than let his bloodline end. Gasikov reminds him to think carefully, his life or his kingdom. The prince suddenly rushes out and mentions his engagement to Charlione. He claims he's willing to give up the engagement in exchange for a ceasefire. The king frantically tries to stop his son's nonsense, but the prince firmly believes the emperor must like her. These words completely enrage Gasikov. His sword instantly points at the prince. The prince immediately immediately collapses to the ground in fear. He restrains his fury, threatening to gouge out the eyes that looked at Charleone. The prince finally confirms he truly came for her. Facing Lucas, who claims to be an imperial spy, Charleone is full of suspicion, until he accurately states the false name Leone. Lucas reassures her that His Majesty keeps his word and will definitely negotiate. Suddenly, deafening noise comes from outside the window. She's amazed to see Gasikov riding past on horseback. Lucas urges her to escape in the chaos. They hurry to the city walls to overlook the battle. Below has become a sea of flames. Lucas quietly explains that although His Majesty brought few men, he's already destroyed their weapons. She asks worriedly if the Empire has the same weapons. Lucas admits they do, but says they rarely use them to avoid harming civilians. At this moment, she also notices strange lights surrounding Gasikov. He walks through the sea of flames unscathed. Lucas also notices His Majesty is unusually different today. Normally, he would have achieved swift victory, leaving no survivors. She recalls the cruel tyrant image from the book. It truly differs greatly from the man before her eyes. At this moment, Felix suddenly begs for mercy loudly, willing to give up the engagement. Lucas shakes his head, saying such wild claims mean certain death. She hurriedly rushes down from the wall, wanting to prevent tragedy. Lucas anxiously chases after her, calling out. She runs desperately toward that figure in the flames, but he can't hear her shouts at all. In desperation, she calls out his real name, Gasikov. He finally turns around and sees her running toward him. He immediately casts protective magic to shield her. Breathless, she says she is Leone, grateful she arrived in time to prevent tragedy, but he pulls her tightly into his arms and whispers. He's tired of looking at her portrait and wants to see her in person. Under everyone's gaze, she blushes deeply. After the flames die down, he asks if the engagement is real. She glares at Felix indignantly and flatly denies it. Gasikov's expression darkens as he orders execution. She hurriedly dissuades him, saying there are other forms of punishment. She worries it will damage His Majesty's reputation and spread infamy. She admits sadly that she once believed those rumors. Before meeting him, she truly misunderstood his nature. He changes the order to break his limbs but spare his life. She's secretly relieved at least his life is spared. Lucas leads the way to the prison holding the knights. Cries for help echo all around. She notices a little girl curled up in the corner. Indescribable compassion wells up in her heart, but she also understands she can't just release prisoners. Irene is worrying aloud about her safety. Hearing her call, he immediately rushes over. His first concern is whether she's injured. While unlocking the cell, she reassures him not to worry. The moment the lock opens, he embraces her tightly. She's touched by his sincere concern, but she hears a cold voice from behind. Gasikov demands to know what Arian is doing. Arian leans against the tree, recalling the changes of the past month. Linoa's military power had been entirely within his grasp, but that princess who always vented her emotions beneath the tree made everything complicated and impossible to let go. He recalls how years ago he asked Garsukov for permission to become a spy. Garsukov was reluctant to part with this brother-in-arms, but Arian laughed and said it was just like taking an extended vacation. In the end, the crown prince reluctantly agreed to his request. He went to Linoa undercover, bearing his mission. Step by step, he became the knight commander, gradually taking control of the entire order. He thought the crown prince had now become emperor and would soon wage war, yet at this time, he unexpectedly began a relationship with Charleone. Every time she came to him, her eyes were filled with affection, but half a year later, she suddenly collapsed and lost her memory. The prince demanded he end his relationship with her. His feelings had been shallow, so he wasn't particularly saddened, until one day she stormed to the tree to vent her frustrations, wildly pulling grass and complaining about why she had to be the unlucky one. It was the first time he saw such a vibrant princess. For the following month, she often came to the tree to release her emotions. He would always secretly watch her from the tree in all her different moods. He discovered he was more drawn to her now than when they were dating. One day she mentioned gloomily about becoming a vassal state. He was shocked that she actually knew of the emperor's strategic plans. Alarmed that he had failed to detect such crucial intelligence, he ordered the Night Order to closely monitor her every move. Yet he couldn't stop thinking about how she had forgotten him. He accompanied her to the Empire but let her disappear during his report. While frantically searching, he was urgently summoned by His Majesty. Garsukov rarely mentioned a woman he was interested in, describing her doe-like eyes and graceful manner. He immediately thought of Charleone's Tuerlin outfit. He asked if that lady had been confined. Garsukov admitted his feelings about not wanting to let her go. After leaving, Arian heard maids gossiping about a woman in the palace. Following the clues, he found that hidden palace. His heart struggled with whether he should risk investigating. Finally breaking the window to confirm it was indeed Charleone. Convinced she didn't want to be imprisoned, he rescued her, but this led to the awkward confrontation in the cell at this moment. Garsukov coldly questioned what he was doing. He inwardly sneered at himself for never being this loyal, yet he ultimately couldn't disobey the imperial command, and released his arms from around Charleone. At this moment, Irene pretends to be calm and plays dumb in response. Garsukov frowns and states bluntly that he is very angry right now. Charleone senses the unusually familiar atmosphere between them. She can't help but ask how they know each other, and why he calls out his name so naturally. In her shock, she can barely stand steady. Irene hurriedly reaches out to support her, but she fiercely slashes slaps away his outstretched hand. Her heart prays it's not what she thinks. She turns to question Arian about what's really going on. Arian guiltily averts his gaze, not daring to meet her eyes. She knows Lainoa has many spies, but she never imagined her most trusted knight was one of them. This cruel truth is too much for her to bear and she faints. She doesn't know how long it's been when she wakes up in the carriage. She finds Garsikaf watching her anxiously. She looks out the window and asks where they're going. When she hears Lainoa, she's so frightened she immediately stands up. Trembling, she asks if he's going to wage war on her country. Tears fall uncontrollably down her face. Garsikaf protectively shields her and tells her to sit down. He repeatedly assures her that absolutely will not happen. He admits there was once such a plan, but he has changed his mind. He doesn't want her to suffer any more shock over this. In the silence, he worries she will distance herself from him because of this. She clutches her dress and admits she does feel uncomfortable. She doesn't understand why they're still going to Lainoa. Garsikaf suddenly asks about her relationship with Arian. She coldly replies they have no relationship at all. He emphasizes he just saw them embracing. She explains it was merely the joy of reunion. But now that trust has completely shattered into fragments. Garsikaf nods understandingly. As the carriage quietly rolls along, he suddenly speaks. He says everyone calls her Charleone instead of Leone. He covers his face and says he also wants to call her Charleone. She gently responds that he can call her whatever he likes. He hopes she can also call him by his name, and she tentatively calls out Garsikaf. His face reddens as he breaks into a happy smile. That expression makes her heart race instantly. She hurriedly closes her eyes and warns herself she can't. She changes the subject and asks a reason for going to Lainoa. He gazes steadily at her and utters the word proposal. She widens her eyes, processing this information. Suddenly feeling somewhat disappointed, she asks who he intends to propose to. Then it suddenly dawns on her that it might be herself. He asks back if she's unwilling, and firmly says there will be no one else but her. Her heart is instantly filled with confusion and conflict. This was clearly part of the plan, yet somehow she feels unhappy. She asks his reason for wanting to marry her. He says it's terrifying without her by his side. Just thinking about her not being near him is unbearable. After a long while, he seriously expresses his feelings of affection. He gently lifts her hand and promises to give her everything. He looks at her sincerely and asks her to marry him. She seriously thanks him and accepts his proposal. He looks up, his eyes filled with the light of happiness. He says he wants to have all of her and asks her to entrust everything to him. For 10 years after his parents were poisoned, Garsikaf lived every night under the shadow of assassination. Whenever he hovered on the edge of life and death, he wanted to rest eternally with his parents. Lying in bed unable to sleep, the numbers of the shadow group kept dwindling. Last time Arian nearly lost his life again, covered in blood as he shielded him. This time he has become the one who wields the sword. Arian said he had surpassed his master. These words made him realize how exhausted Arian must be living days that even he himself couldn't endure. Soon after, Arian went to Lainoa, leaving him alone in the cold palace. In those years of growing emotional numbness, even those who shared his hardships left him. At the coronation ceremony, Duke Side cursed that he would suffer divine retribution, filled with rage. He sneered coldly that he had long suffered divine punishment. No need to wait. Finally able to point his sword at Duke's side and expose the spy beside him. Brian's betrayal left Seed in disbelief. When Garsikaf thrust his sword into the man's body, his heart only grew more hollow. The heart he thought revenge would fill remained terrifyingly empty. Just as the emptiness expanded infinitely, she appeared in his life. Unlike those who chased after benefits, her eyes were innocent and carefree. Every movement was delicate and adorable, making him want to treasure her. Yet she always wanted to escape, even though he was willing to fulfill every request. He caressed her face in the portrait, regretting having let her leave. He vowed never to let go when they met again. A subordinate suggested making her empress, and this idea suddenly enlightened him. He planned to propose to her after the negotiations, offering Tuerlin as a gift. When he heard Felix wanted to marry her, jealousy gnawed at his heart like a venomous snake. He wanted to gouge out that man's eyes, cut off his tongue, and tear him apart. When she ran toward him calling his name, his heartbeat instantly spiraled out of control. Thinking she came for him, this expectation made him willingly wait. But Arian actually embraced her, making him unable to resist questioning. In the carriage, he was anxious, fearing she would hate him because of what just happened. For the first time in his life caring about another's feelings, his mind was in chaos. Carefully asking if he made her unhappy, afraid she would distance herself. Learning she had no special relationship with Arian, he felt slightly relieved. He longed for her to use his name intimately, as she did with Arian. When she softly called his name, indescribable joy welled up in his heart. When asked the purpose of his visit, he awkwardly turned his head and said the word proposal. Then he tightly grasped her hand, promising to give her all glory and vowing to keep her by his side. He whispers his desire to possess all of her, but Charleone firmly states she belongs only to herself. Her heart is filled with distrust and hesitation about love. She says even though she likes him more and more, she cannot have expectations. Garsikaf freezes for a moment, gently kisses the back of her hand and promises to respect her choice. At this moment, a knight comes to report a falcon message from Tuerlin. She gets out of the carriage, with him for fresh air but senses many watchful gazes. A man who calls himself Henry respectfully bows to her in greeting. She wonders why everyone is staring at her. Everyone hastily averts their eyes, the atmosphere atmosphere subtle. Henry explains that everyone is curious about the woman Garsakov has fallen for. She's about to return to the carriage when she suddenly glimpses a little girl in a cell. Henry explains this might be a saint or a witch. She was imprisoned in Tuerlin, and they brought her along. Charlione softly asks if she can speak with the girl. After receiving permission, she gently greets the girl. The girl timidly says her name is Benny. Charlione notices how she trembles with fear. Benny suddenly leans close to her ear and whispers a request. They come to a secluded spot where Charlione carefully washes her face. Benny gratefully thanks her and hopes to stay by her side always. Charlione is about to stroke her head but pulls back in shock. Benny's gaze suddenly becomes sharp, as if she's become a different person. She sneers coldly and warns Charlione not to interfere with the Emperor's affairs. Charlione realizes in shock this might be the god Klihael. The entity seems to know Charlione's origins. She wants to ask more details, but the entity only warns her again before vanishing without a trace. Benny then returns to normal, clinging to her in terror and crying. She sobs that she doesn't remember what just happened. Charlione holds her tightly, softly comforting her. She realizes saints are merely puppets bound by the gods. She asks Garsakov if she can keep Benny by her side to care for her. Though concerned about safety, he agrees to entrust her to the female mage. He orders Benny's hair color changed to protect her identity. Benny obediently follows Leon away. Garsakov gently takes Charlione's hand. He tenderly invites her to return to the carriage together. Night deepens as the carriage slowly moves along the silent road. Charlione ponders the reason for Benny's strangeness, her heart full of confusion. She softly asks Garsakov how he will handle the girl, but he evades the answer, his eyes holding an inscrutable depth. She lowers her head in disappointment, feeling he doesn't fully trust her. Garsakov sees through her thoughts and sighs helplessly. He admits he kept Benny because she has value to exploit, and as emperor he must consider the empire's interests. Though she understands, she still feels pained by this answer. He watches her anxiously, afraid she will hate him. She softly reassures him that she understands his position. Just as the atmosphere eases, Henry suddenly pokes his head through the window. He reminds them the full moon night is about to begin. Charlione recalls what she read in books about full moon nights. During 3 consecutive days of full moon, people exposed to moonlight might be cursed. This means their journey will be delayed by 3 days. She worries news of war will reach Linoa first. She urgently asks if there's a shortcut to arrive sooner. After hesitating briefly, he decides to take her through the Sobek Mountains. This path, notorious for rampant bandits, makes her extremely nervous. Meanwhile, she still worries about Benny's safety, restrained outside. She requests bringing Benny inside the carriage to avoid danger. After hesitating repeatedly, he finally agrees to this request. At this moment, bandits attack, and he resolutely gets out to fight. Inside the carriage, she softly comforts the frightened Benny, but Benny sees through her inner fear and comforts her instead. Remembering how Benny was accused of killing her own mother, her heart aches. She actively takes Benny into her embrace, seeking mutual comfort. The two embrace and talk, gradually dispelling the fear in their hearts. Soon he returns triumphant, all bandits subdued. He demands Benny leave, but she insists on bringing her along. He stares at Benny with displeasure. The atmosphere suddenly tense. Benny quietly asks about their relationship. She blushes and says they are lovers about to be married. Hearing the word groom, a peculiar warmth surges in his heart. After arriving at Linoa, she tells her family about this experience. They are shocked by the news that Orion is a spy. When the king asks if she will become an imperial consort, she blushes. Charlione recalls the scene when Henry introduced himself. He insisted on calling her name more before she becomes empress. Does everyone know the emperor intends to make her empress? She quietly asks Henry not to call her that, as it troubles her. But Henry says his majesty announced before leaving that he was going to fetch his empress. This news stirs an indescribable panic in her heart. When she tells her family about this, they are all astonished. In the reception room, the king brings up the emperor's proposal. Garsakov bluntly says he will take her back to the empire in 3 days. The family all feel it's too hasty and there's no time to prepare. They mention Arian's matter requires careful consideration. Garsakov states he will prepare everything, she only needs to show up. He suggests letting Arian accompany them to the empire as a guard, and promises he will never wage war against Linoa. Charlione understands this is to clean up after Arian's spy identity. Garsakov then presents his prepared proposal gift. He will give Tuerlin to Linoa. This astonishing decision stuns everyone. She can't believe he's giving away an entire kingdom. Seeing her hesitation, Garsakov considerately asks if she wants a different gift. She hastily refuses, saying this generous gift is more than enough. The family has long been shocked speechless by this series of announcements. She begins to worry about packing within 3 days. Tina anxiously says the jewels and dresses all need careful handling. She suggests bringing only necessities and minimizing the dresses. Only then does Tina agree to first organize the most important jewels. She takes out a small case to pack the most important items. But her deepest worry is the future issue of imperial consorts. She thinks the empire at its peak must have people recommending consorts. Political marriages often involve complex webs of interests. She doesn't know how long Garsakaf's affection for her will last. She takes out a magically bound contract. It requires Garsakaf to never punish her and never attack Lenoa. She carefully tucks the contract into a book and puts it in her luggage. Without this safeguard, she can never feel at ease. Then she begins worrying about the restraint device on Benny. Checking records, she finds no precedent for receiving divine oracles while wearing restraints. She asks Tina to confirm there is only one god in this world, Kli-Hiel. The full moon nights end, but the journey is delayed another day for Arian's handover. She comes to the familiar tree to recall past times. She has recently found her past life memories growing blurrier. Turning around, she's surprised to see Arian standing behind her. Meeting him at this place surprises her greatly. Charlione is very surprised by Arian's appearance in the princess's palace courtyard. She remembers this is where the body's original owner often came before her transmigration, but his appearance now still strikes her as shamelessly audacious. She bluntly questions why this imperial spy approached her. Arian only lowers his head in admission, saying he'll do anything for forgiveness. She sneers and asks if he was kind to her out of pity. If not, then all this would be too cruel. The moment of departure arrives, and she bids her family a reluctant farewell. The instant the carriage starts, tears finally burst from her eyes. Anxiety about the future plunges her into deep fear. Garsakaf takes her hand, eager to see her smile. She only asks that he never change his heart, but he doesn't know she's anxious inside about not being strong enough. She needs to grow quickly, so she can trust him without reservation. At dusk, they arrive at Tyle, preparing to cast illusion magic. Magical lights dance in the air, blurring their features. Garsakaf is dissatisfied with the effect and demands higher-level magic. When they see each other's transformed appearance, she exclaims in delighted admiration. Entering Teal City, she recalls the night she toured with Arian. The mayor greets them respectfully, but his gaze lingers briefly on her. She can't help but worry if the magic truly conceals their identities. Tina dresses her carefully, making her breathtakingly beautiful in the mirror. Garsakaf has been waiting outside, his eyes full of anticipation. He takes her hand and kisses it lightly. She stands on tiptoe and whispers in his ear, suggesting they use false names. He tells her he's called Kasher, but that's too obvious. She suddenly thinks of rhyming nicknames, Lily and Shasha. He repeatedly calls her Lily, each time filled with affection. Then he invites her to enjoy Tyle's night view together, his eyes expectant. Though she has seen it before, she still nods in agreement. She doesn't want to disappoint his tenderness and thoughtfulness at this moment. The night breeze gently brushes Charlione's long hair as lights flicker on distant walls. Garsakaf gently embraces her from behind, his warm breath caressing her ear. She gazes into the distance, saying this night view makes all worries disappear. He quietly asks if she feels uneasy about going to the Empire. She admits her heart is tangled with both anticipation and fear of the new environment. He asks dejectedly if she regrets getting engaged to him. He always feels there's an invisible wall between them. Deep down, she knows it's because she has experienced too much that destroyed her trust. She can't help but keep her distance from him. He gently turns her around and looks directly into her eyes. He admits what he said before about respecting her wasn't sincere. He caresses her cheek, saying he wants to possess all of her. He suddenly sweeps her up and walks toward the city wall's edge. She asks in panic what he's doing, her heart pounding like a drum. He says he wants to be alone with her, then leaps off the city wall. She closes her eyes tightly in midair, terrified out of her wits. When they stop, she finds they're standing atop the city's tallest tower. She clutches his clothes tightly, begging him to take her back, but he sits down holding her, saying only the two of them are here. She remains pressed against him, not daring to relax at all. He guides her to look down at the myriad lights below like a river of stars. He softly says as long as she's by his side, it doesn't matter if she doesn't like him. Her heart fills with bitterness, not understanding why he's so humble, but she dares not say she likes him, fearing she'll fail his sincerity. He cups her face and gazes deeply into her eyes. Before she can react, he gently kisses her lips. He whispers in her ear that he wishes this world held only the two of them. Leaning in his embrace, she doubts if she can bear such deep affection. Finally gathering courage, she asks to leave this dizzying height. As she wishes, he holds her and leaps across rooftops again. Before returning to the room, he still holds her tightly, unwilling to let go. She pushes him away, blushing, reminding him they must rise early tomorrow. As she turns, he gently catches her skirt. Like a child, he requests one last embrace. She relents helplessly, a touch of sweetness rising in her heart. Even after she closes the door, he stands there reluctant to leave. The Empire's three great ducal families stand as equals. They pass through Duke Braden's territory. Charlione has just stepped from the carriage when a chill suddenly shoots up her spine. A cold gleam cuts through the air, a dagger aimed straight at her heart. Lightning fast, Garsakaf raises his hand and precisely catches the flying blade's hilt. His face turns instantly pale, fear flooding his heart like a tide. Irene and Leon shoot like arrows after the assassin's disappearing figure. Charleone throws herself into his arms, trembling uncontrollably. After returning indoors, he gently strokes her back, softly comforting her. She suddenly looks up, her eyes gleaming with determination. She requests to learn self-defense, whether magic or swordsmanship. He hesitates briefly but ultimately agrees to arrange it for her. Irene hurries back, reporting the results with a grave expression. The assassin bit down on poison when surrounded and died on the spot. From the equipment, this was a senior member of the Brodovan Guild. Henry suddenly appears, speculating it's the work of nobles who resented the crown prince. Garsikov sternly stops him from revealing more about past grievances. He immediately orders heightened security and vows to guard her closely. When everyone withdraws, she softly expresses her gratitude, but he blushes and says he's more grateful she's unharmed. He lowers his head and places a gentle kiss on her lips. The next evening, Aiso arrives cheerfully for a visit. Hearing she wants to learn magic, Aiso eagerly tests her aptitude. Holding her hands to sense for a moment, Aiso's brow furrows tighter. Aiso admits she has no magical talent but has discovered an abnormality. Ordinary priests have divine power evenly distributed throughout their body, but within her, a small amount of divine power is concentrated in her chest. This is identical to the form of power in the Saint Benny, but her divine power is too weak for her to be a saint. Charleone warily asks what would happen if this news leaked. Aiso warns she might be forcibly taken to the temple. She immediately informs Garsikov of this. He's deeply shocked and insists Aiso explain in person. After hearing the detailed explanation, his expression grows even graver. He warns that if this spreads, it will alarm the Holy Empire. He grips her hand tightly and vows he will never let anyone take her away. But her mind is in turmoil, hesitating whether to reveal the truth. If she reveals the secret of her transmigration, she'll surely be taken for a madwoman. The corridors of the Imperial Council echo with fierce arguments among nobles. An elderly noble pounds the table, insisting a foreign princess is unfit to be empress. Another minister worries the emperor will exploit legal loopholes to achieve his goal. He proposes making the princess a consort first, then proceeding gradually. But more nobles worry this will cause even greater turmoil. At this moment, someone mentions Lady Eleonora, called the Star of the Empire. Her father, Duke Gerald, humbly states he has no intention of competing for the empress position, but deep down he knows his daughter has always longed to become Garsikov's companion. Returning to the estate, Duke Gerald finds his daughter in the study. Eleonora sits elegantly on the sofa. He probes, asking if his daughter still harbors the dream of becoming empress. Her eyes gleam with determination. She admits she hopes more to win Garsikov's true heart. Her father warns that if it's only for power, she should give up early. But she says this has been her dream since childhood and she won't retreat easily. But she states she won't obstruct the princess's path to becoming empress. At this moment, the atmosphere in the carriage traveling through the streets is warm. Garsikov gently tells her the people are all anticipating her arrival, but Charleone feels these cheers are all because of him. She worries inwardly if she would truly be welcomed without his arrangements. After arriving at the palace, the steward respectfully leads them to the reception room. He reports the results and recommendations from today's council discussion. He believes they should hold an engagement ceremony first to avoid rushing. Garsikov frowns with displeasure, showing his habitual impatience. The steward further explains that forcing her appointment as empress would only damage her reputation. Charleone immediately understands she has no foundation in this empire. The steward suggests using this time to make Linoa more prosperous. She immediately states she can take the opportunity to learn the empire's culture and etiquette. But Garsikov believes as long as he gains the three dukes' support, it can be done. But the steward points out Duke Gerald may remain neutral. Ultimately, Garsikov must compromise and accept this gradual approach. When discussing residence, Garsikov hopes she can live in the same palace. But both the steward and Charleone oppose this improper suggestion. Finally, they settle on the consort palace closest to Garsikov's chambers. After the steward withdraws, Charleone marvels at his capabilities. Garsikov speaks of this steward who taught him since childhood. He mentions Arian always accompanied him through difficult years of study. He naturally proposes making Arian her personal guard. Though she has reservations, she compromises under his insistence. Finally, he arranges for her the etiquette instructor who once taught him. She looks forward to learning grace and wisdom from this instructor. After the conversation ends, Garsikov gently invites her to tour her new residence. Charleone steps into the palace called Dahlia Palace. The garden full of blooming flowers takes her breath away. Tina leads a middle-aged woman forward. She introduces this as the maid Natalie recommended by the chief steward. Natalie bows respectfully, mentioning she once served in the emperor's palace. Charleone keenly senses the probing in her words and asks if she transferred willingly. Natalie slips and mentions the term new empress, then realizes she has misspoken. Charleone's expression turns cold as she reminds her to watch her words. Natalie frantically explains the chief steward often spoke of it, and she accidentally let it slip. Charleone follows up by asking about her relationship with the chief steward, her gaze piercing. Natalie must admit she's his adopted daughter, and uses a different surname to avoid suspicion. Charleone asks about her family situation and learns she has a son who raises cats. This detail reminds her the chief steward mentioned his grandson raising cats, and she understands. Soon after, the chief steward comes to report on preparations for the triumph celebration. He tells Charleone she can ask ask Natalie any questions. Charleone suddenly reveals his father-daughter relationship with Natalie, catching him off guard. The chief steward lowers his head in admission, explaining this is a rarely known secret. Charleone modestly says Natalie let it slip and mentions the amusing fact about his grandson raising cats. When his grandson is mentioned, the chief steward's face finally shows a genuine smile. At this moment, the court instructor's arrival interrupts the conversation. Charleone gracefully performs a Linoan courtesy. The instructor lavishly praises the beauty of Linoan etiquette, but says nothing about teaching imperial etiquette. Charleone asks in confusion if she needs to learn local etiquette, and the answer is unexpected. The instructor insists she continue using Linoan etiquette, believing it will become the new fashion. This explanation makes Charleone suspicious, feeling there's something else behind it. Suddenly, a fierce argument between Tina and a costume designer comes from the distance. Tina angrily accuses the designer of providing coarse fabric unfit for royal garments. The designer retorts mockingly that she's from a small country and doesn't understand imperial fashion. Tina doesn't back down, sarcastically saying the designer can't even find suitable fabric and doesn't deserve the title. The dispute escalates, drawing onlookers and creating chaos. Charleone turns to ask Natalie. She learns Garsakov's wardrobe has always been personally managed by the chief steward. She immediately decides to entrust all wardrobe matters to Tina. At this moment, Benny runs over and throws herself into her arms, expressing days of longing. Charleone embraces her tenderly and suggests making new clothes for her too, her eyes gentle. She announces custom dresses for all the maids, and Tina is overjoyed to hear this. She also orders those 2 disrespectful suppliers permanently blacklisted, her attitude firm. After handling these matters, she thinks of the contract. She takes out that precious contract and reads it carefully. She looks forward to the day when she can finally trust that person wholeheartedly. Charleone shares lunch with Caesarion, savoring a rare moment of peace. Since arriving at the Empire, she has been too busy to enjoy such warmth. He asks if she has sword training scheduled for today. Upon her confirmation, he immediately summons Adrian. He announces that Adrian will serve as her personal guard from now on. Adrian bows respectfully, pledging to protect her with his life. In the afternoon, knights train diligently at the practice grounds. She arrives at this unfamiliar place with Adrian and Selena. Lucas greets her warmly and asks about her purpose here. She admits she wants to learn swordsmanship from the commander. This reminds her of their discussion in his study a few days ago. He had discovered she possessed no magical talent, and suggested she learn swordsmanship instead. He insisted on teaching her personally, but Harold bluntly advised against it. Harold pointed out that his duties left no time for teaching. He also reminded him that seeing her struggle would make it impossible to train her strictly. These words made him pause, and he had to admit they were true. He looked at Adrian, considering him as her instructor, but Harold volunteered eagerly. Claiming his swordsmanship was superior, he remarked sarcastically that Harold could wield a sword but not teach. He suggested Balder instead, sparking a heated argument. Harold and Balder argued fiercely, nearly coming to blows. In the end, he decided Harold would handle her sword training. Now Harold carefully inspects her attire and equipment. He demands she call him Master Harold, and she laughs while playing along. He demonstrates basic movements for her to follow. Seeing her clumsy form, he decides to start with basic fitness. He orders her to run laps around the training ground until exhaustion. Adrian immediately intervenes to stop this overly harsh demand. He stresses the need to constantly monitor her physical condition. Harold compromises, remarking that she has a devoted guard. As she starts running, Lucas catches up from behind to accompany her. They chat about their time in Thuvalsen while running. This warmth touches her deeply, easing some of her fatigue. After finishing, Harold still criticizes her poor stamina. She collapses to her knees, doubting if she can ever learn swordsmanship. Adrian and Harold begin another round of bickering. A month passes amid all this commotion. Before the victory banquet, the maids gaze breathlessly at Charleone in her new attire. Her moonlit white gown outlines her graceful figure, as if a moon goddess has descended to earth. She gazes at her reflection, marveling at Selena's exceptional taste. Caesarion appears behind her and gently pulls her into his embrace. He stares at her with devotion, as if etching this moment into his heart forever. His deep voice whispers in her ear, confessing his desire to keep her all to himself. She has grown accustomed to his intense possessiveness. The two enter the banquet hall together. They instantly become the center of attention. She notices 2 chairs placed side by side, feeling a hint of uncertainty. After his confirmation, she sits down gracefully but feels burning gazes from all around. He scans every man present with a warning glare. She realizes helplessly that he expects her to look only at him all night. Next, Caesarion must attend the award ceremony alone. He suggests she wait on the balcony. With Adrian's company, she retreats to the balcony for a moment of quiet. Harold approaches with a wine glass, his eyes filled with admiration. Balder follows close behind, greeting her politely. The 3 start bickering the moment they meet, livening up the atmosphere. Meanwhile, the noblewomen inside are eagerly discussing her beauty. They then mention how the dukes all gather around her. A blonde woman suddenly interjects, her tone dripping with disdain and provocation. She confidently declares she will approach the dukes herself, drawing laughter from the crowd. Earlier, when Charleone and Caesarion appeared together, the entire room was captivated. The blonde woman watches this dazzling couple with jealousy from the crowd. She secretly resolves to target a duke tonight. Noticing Charleone heading to the balcony with Adrian, she immediately misunderstands. When several dukes follow to the balcony, it confirms her suspicions. She musters her courage, grabs a wine glass, and decides to investigate. Charleone listens to the conversation, then turns around and startles. The balcony suddenly fills with noble women. Only then does she realize all the unmarried dukes are beside her. A lady boldly asks to join their conversation. Balder and Harold quickly excuse themselves and leave. The noble women fix their gazes on them. The blonde woman suddenly speaks up, sarcastically questioning Charleone's character. This sudden accusation leaves Charleone frozen in place, unsure how to respond. Charleone curtsies elegantly, introducing herself as Charleone Rose Lenoa with impeccable grace. The woman aggressively demands why she has not learned imperial etiquette. Charleone calmly explains this was Lady Valentina's instruction. A count suddenly interjects, praising her elegant manners. Everyone agrees, acknowledging Lady Valentina's authority. The woman's face turns red with anger, but she struggles to maintain composure. She loudly mocks Charleone's behavior as improper, and Charleone can only insist there must be some misunderstanding. The woman expects everyone to condemn Charleone, but instead hears whispers about herself. The whispers call her rude and lacking propriety. In fury, she splashes her wine directly at Charleone. Adrian steps in front just in time. The wine splashes back onto the woman's own face. He gracefully offers his handkerchief with perfect manners. The woman snatches the handkerchief and flees in embarrassment, leaving everyone exchanging glances. Charleone notices with surprise that Adrian seems somewhat different than before. Everyone gathers around to comfort her, eagerly inviting her for tea. She forces a smile while desperately wanting to leave. Then Eleonora and Isabella step forward to introduce themselves. Their influence in high society puts Charleone on guard. Eleonora warmly invites her to share some rare tea. Seeing no way out, she reluctantly accepts the invitation. Seeing this, everyone grows more enthusiastic, expressing their anticipation. Just as she is about to break down, Caesarion appears at the perfect moment. The crowd recedes like a tide, and Adrian thoughtfully draws the curtains. He quietly asks about the commotion, and she brushes it off lightly. He then asks if she has any men she fancies, his tone subtle. She replies playfully that she is quite popular, with both men and women seeking her out. He admits this is exactly what worries him. Gazing at the night beyond the balcony, he says he wants to dance with her. She refuses in a panic, confessing she cannot dance. She worries she will step on his feet, but he laughs and lifts her up. He gently removes her shoes. He lets her stand on his feet and slowly spins with her. She leans carefully into his embrace, her heart racing uncontrollably. This special dance turns out to be simpler and more romantic than she imagined. He whispers in her ear that he wants to dance like this at their engagement ceremony. She says shyly that everyone will be watching, making it too conspicuous. He holds her tight, his voice tinged with possessiveness. She nestles quietly in his arms, thinking she should learn to dance after all. Charleone confides her confusion to Natalie about why the nobles are so kind to her. Natalie explains that high-ranking nobles excel at hiding their true intentions behind courtesy. They appear polite on the surface, while always ready to pounce on their prey. She reminds Charleone that despite her success at the banquet, she must stay vigilant. Charleone asks if they look down on her because she is from Linoa. Natalie points out that nobles follow her personally, not Linoan culture. She advises Charleone to solidify her position while she is still in the spotlight. Charleone takes the advice and decides to host a tea party. Steward Thomas comes to discuss arrangements for the engagement ceremony. He suggests a simple yet elegant ceremony held inside the palace. Charleone worries that a modest ceremony will make the nobles look down on her. Thomas proposes holding a grand engagement parade after the ceremony. This would showcase her popularity among the people and solidify the engagement. Charleone secretly admires how Thomas always achieves goals with minimal cost. But Thomas suddenly starts coughing, looking fatigued. Charleone asks about his health with concern. Thomas says his cold may have returned and he needs to see a priest for treatment. Charleone suggests he eat more eldernight berries to boost his immunity. Thomas looks puzzled, saying he does not know what fruit that is. Charleone says the palace garden has these berries. Thomas says everyone thought those were wild berries for birds. An idea strikes Charleone, and she decides to make jam for him herself. At the afternoon tea party, the noble ladies show more enthusiasm for Charleone than expected. Eleonora presents rare tea leaves from the eastern continent. After tasting it, Charleone recognizes it as the familiar rooibos tea, but her memories from before crossing over have become hazy. Eleonora keenly asks how she knows this tea. The eastern continent has cut off trade with them. Thinking quickly, Charleone says it was from Linoa's storage. Eleonora drops the subject and praises the pastries on the table instead. The ladies rave about the scones paired with jam. At the end of the tea party, Charleone gifts them her homemade eldernight berry jam. She explains in detail the immune immune-boosting properties of the jam. Eleonora stays behind alone, saying she has important matters to discuss. She asks for paper and pen, then writes down a shocking proposal to help Charleone become empress. Charleone asks warily why she would give up her own ambition to become empress. Eleonora says she changed her mind after seeing the emperor's attitude toward her at the banquet. Charleone suddenly asks if she has feelings for the emperor. Eleonora's stunned expression makes Charleone uneasy. Charleone realizes she cares more and more about the emperor possibly having other consorts. This feeling makes her unable to tolerate any woman getting close to him. Eleonora reaffirms she will not interfere with her relationship with his majesty, but Charleone does not believe a single word she says. Eleonora offers to write a formal pledge to show her sincerity. Charleone takes what she wrote, not understanding why she cannot just say it directly. Late at night, she still ponders this mystery. She cannot understand what Eleonora really wants from her. Caesarion visits suddenly, keenly sensing something on her mind. She is surprised that he can always see through her emotional changes. He praises the great success of her tea party, saying the guests all spoke highly of her. But she recalls Eleonora's strange expression at the end. She cannot help but ask his opinion of Eleonora. He says Duke Gerald's daughter is quite fearless. He recalls her brave performance when surrounded by assassins. She wants to ask more about their relationship, but he interrupts, saying he does not want to waste their time together talking about others. The next day, she goes to the library to find books about the Eastern continent. The librarian enthusiastically recommends related materials. Turning the pages, a passage about heresy catches her attention. The librarian explains this sealed history in detail. Initially, the Eastern continent denied the existence of gods. Then monsters emerged across the Eastern continent. A hero of the Eastern continent appeared according to divine revelation. He slayed the monsters and won the people's respect. The people regarded the hero as a being surpassing the gods. They accused all saints and priestesses, eventually executing them all. That hero was ultimately executed by a saint in the name of divine punishment. During sword practice, she still ponders why the hero rejected the divine revelation. Harold reminds her to focus on the training at hand. At night, she collapses onto the bed exhausted, her whole body aching. Caesarion suddenly appears and holds her tightly in his arms. He expresses his pain at being too busy to see her, and worries Harold is giving her a hard time in training. She explains it is just because her stamina is lacking. Before she can finish, she falls into deep sleep from exhaustion. When she wakes, she finds herself lying in Caesarion's arms. She is surprised at their intimacy before even being engaged, but he says they are no different from a married couple. His handsome face drawing closer makes her heart race suddenly. Before the kiss falls, he says he is hopelessly captivated by her. He accidentally mentions they do not have much time left together. She asks in shock what he means by that. He reveals his plan to attack Portalia. After the alliance ceremony, he hopes to complete this military operation before the wedding. She does not understand why he insists on continuing the war. He says it is commanded by a divine revelation he received as a child. He was told he would obtain what he desires. She asks if he truly needs that promise so desperately. He says he could live without it, but fears everything he has now will slip away. She suggests he protect what he already has, like being wary of people behind her. But he misunderstands, thinking she has fallen for someone else and plans to elope. He bites her neck gently out of jealousy. He demands she reveal who the man is. She hurriedly explains she was only asking what to do if someone wants to kill her. Only then does he calm down and tends to the mark on her neck. She reflects on whether she has not given him enough sense of security. Suddenly, he pulls her tightly into his arms, declaring she is his. He begs her to admit with her own lips that she belongs to him. She says she will be completely his if he agrees to 2 conditions. He smiles and reminds her he already promised her everything she wants. She asks him not to enter war lightly, and that no other woman can appear by his side. He promises he will want no one but her. She grips his hand and says if that day ever comes, consider the promise never existed. A few days later, Selena excitedly reports that the head steward has arrived with carriages full of goods. Charleone and the maids look down from the window together. They see a long procession, as magnificent as a parade. She hurries downstairs and catches a familiar tea fragrance. She keenly identifies it as the distinctive aroma of rooibos tea. The steward respectfully presents rare tea from the Eastern continent. She had assumed the steward already knew what happened at the tea party, but the steward says he has entrusted all her affairs to Natalie. He then produces a bolt of red silk with stunning quality. The sheen and texture of the silk leave everyone breathless. Selena nearly jumps with excitement, unable to contain her joy. She hands the silk to Selena, who knows fabrics best, for careful appreciation. She asks the steward to convey her thanks to His Majesty for his generous gifts. She asks with concern about the effectiveness of the berry syrup. The steward praises its effects as more remarkable than priestly healing. She decides to make more syrup to show her appreciation. A moment later, she asks Bella what dessert she wants most. Seeing Bella's expectant eyes, she resolves to make it herself. Selena worries and reminds her of her poor skills in the past. She awkwardly admits her memory loss, but still wants to try her best. Unwilling to disappoint Bella, she decides to prove herself. The group heads cheerfully to the kitchen of Dahlia Palace. After hearing Bella describe the chocolate dessert Esther gave her, she confidently promises to make an even more delicious lava cake. With Chef Caroline's assistance, they begin preparing ingredients. Charleone notices this world has few desserts because whipping is difficult. Then she recalls Bella mentioning that Esther loves desserts. She immediately sends for Esther from the arcane division. The carefully made cake is placed in the oven to bake. An enticing aroma soon fills the entire kitchen. Esther follows the scent, her face full of anticipation. Charleone warmly invites her to taste the freshly baked chocolate cake. Esther is moved to tears and praises it endlessly. Adrian arrives just then, and Charleone quickly invites him. Unfortunately, he does not like chocolate. By now, Esther has finished her cake. Charleone quietly asks Esther about making binding devices. She learns that World Tree Darkleaf is the key material. She requests a more beautiful anklet be made for Bella. She offers desserts in exchange, and Esther is very tempted. Charleone plans to craft an exquisite anklet from moonsilver, but Esther says moonsilver is mostly used for weapons. Using moonsilver for jewelry is too extravagant, but she still quietly resolves to make a moonsilver anklet for Bella. Charleone carefully prepares new desserts again. Selena encourages her enthusiastically, saying His Majesty will surely love this gesture. She brings the desserts to Caesarian's office. He looks up in surprise from his meeting and immediately pauses it. He gently invites her to the reception room, but he frowns upon hearing she made the desserts herself. He worries the palace pastry chef's work has displeased her. She hurriedly explains these were specially prepared for him with care. These words instantly soften his gaze. He carefully takes a bite and shows a satisfied smile. She says the cookies are a return gift for his presence, but he says the real gift is her visit, which makes him forget all his troubles. She asks with concern and learns the borders are experiencing a flu outbreak. The priests deliberately delay treatment to elevate the temple's status. She immediately thinks of elder night berries and suggests them. He is surprised by her knowledge of herbs and asks why. She hastily explains it is just a personal interest. He suddenly smiles and asks if she is interested in him. She recalls how insecure Caesarion seemed before, so she musters the courage to confess her feelings. But an urgent report interrupts her unexpectedly. The flu epidemic spreads rapidly, and the situation grows dire. He immediately orders large-scale harvesting of elder night berries to combat the epidemic. She recalls nobles like to plant them in their gardens, and suggests collecting from them. This suggestion gains his approval and is immediately put into action. After returning to the palace, she distributes the remaining desserts to others. She specially prepares chocolate-free treats for Adrian. He praises them sincerely after tasting, but mentions her former preferences. He says she used to dislike sweets, which surprises her greatly. This detail makes her realize the original owner's close relationship with him. Soon after, elder night berries prove remarkably effective in fighting the epidemic. The nobles benefit as well, greatly improving their opinion of her. Selena excitedly tells her she has become the center of social attention. She asks Selena if she really used to hate sweets. After confirmation, she worries her identity will be discovered. Selena gently says she likes the current her better. These words finally lift a weight from her heart. Charleone successfully convinces Caesarion to arrange dance lessons for her. The instructor praises her rapid progress and graceful dancing. She is delighted to discover unprecedented control over her body. Selena says this is thanks to her persistent sword training. The instructor invites Adrian to be her dance partner for practice. Then Eleonora suddenly visits. She gets straight to the point and asks for paper and pen. Charleone tries to avoid the topic, but Eleonora firmly interrupts. Eleonora solemnly begins writing her pledge. Charleone presses her about whether she has special feelings for the emperor. Eleonora openly admits admiration but not love. This honesty eases some of Charleone's doubts. The paper gradually fills with promises and guarantees to help her ascend. Eleonora promises she will not become an obstacle between her and the emperor, but Charleone insists she reveal her true purpose before signing. Eleonora finally confesses her ambition to run for pope. She needs recommendation letters from 3 nations to qualify as a candidate. Only Charleone can help her achieve this. Eleonora has prepared for years and is confident she can win on merit. Charleone is moved by her ambition and honesty but tears up the pledge. Then she throws it into the burning fireplace. She says this document could become a weapon to threaten each other. She believes they can honor their agreement without a written oath. She solemnly declares an alliance with Eleonora. Now Charleone can finally stand firm on her own strength, no longer relying on contracts. After seeing her guest off, she takes out her own treasured pledge and burns it as well. The next day, the steward comes to discuss the parade arrangements. She proposes an innovative plan, suggesting the Arcane Division and Holy Knights participate together. The steward praises this idea for boosting efficiency and grandeur, but he worries they may not want to take on extra work. Charleone says she will do her best to convince them to join. She then asks about the flu epidemic and learns it is under control. The steward suggests she visit the outskirts to comfort the people, and Charleone gladly agrees. The next day, Charleone hosts another small tea party. Together with Eleonora, she wins the support of a noble lady. The lady shows great interest in swordsmanship, and Charleone promises to inquire about learning options. The next day, she visits the Arcane Division with specially made hot dogs. Esther says everyone has been looking forward to her visit. Bella runs over happily, saying she has gained weight recently. Charleone gently picks her up, saying she does not mind the weight. Then she presents the improved moonsilver anklet of excellent quality. Esther recognizes it as made from premium moonsilver. Charleone sees the arcane chest and asks if she can have one too. Esther readily agrees to introduce her to a craftsman. Charleone takes the opportunity to request help with the parade, but Esther shows a disappointed expression. Charleone thinks they are unwilling and says she will not force them, but she explains they had prepared a surprise. They did not expect Charleone to bring it up herself. Charleone is moved to tears, not expecting to receive a gift. Everyone comforts her, promising to make the ceremony spectacular. Bella also wants to give a gift and suggests removing her anklet. Charleone worries about the curse and politely declines the offer. Seeing her disappointment, she asks her to help make the engagement cake instead. Bella happily jumps into her arms and agrees. In this moment, Charleone feels happier than ever before. These days, Charleone keeps making mistakes while practicing dance steps with Adrian. She keeps stepping on his shoes, feeling deeply apologetic. Just as she struggles with the complex steps, Caesarion suddenly appears. He wraps his arm around her waist from behind, his tone clearly displeased. After dismissing the others, he bluntly expresses his displeasure at what he just saw. Charleone explains this is necessary practice for dance lessons, but he insists she can only dance with the instructor, and even feels jealous about that. She reminds him helplessly that he is too busy with state affairs to always be with her. He pleads like a child, demanding Adrian only serve as a bodyguard. She soothes him gently, saying no one but him would get the wrong idea. Then she realizes he still does not understand her feelings, so she stands on tiptoe and places a gentle kiss on his cheek. He pretends to agree seriously, but jealousy surges again the next moment. He says her every move is too enchanting, making him want to keep her all to himself. They agree to practice dancing together when he has time. She worries about stepping on his feet, and he laughs, saying there will be punishment. The moment he finishes speaking, she steps on him. He leans down and kisses her lips. He announces with a smile that this is the punishment. When she steps on him again, he says the punishment will double. She can only be grateful they are in the ballroom and not the bedchamber. The next day, she is to visit the outskirts to comfort the people, and she feels drowsy while getting ready. Sword training has left her exhausted, but thinking of her progress, she feels it is all worth it. Selena enthusiastically helps her dress up. She vows to make her the most dazzling presents. When Eleonora and Isabella arrive, they praise her outfit endlessly. The three receive a warm welcome from the people during their outing. A woman excitedly thanks her for saving her child. She responds gently and offers prepared berries, wishing the child a speedy recovery. Then a man of distinguished bearing watches her from the crowd. He steps forward and bows, praising her beauty as far surpassing her portrait. He introduces himself as Roland, Crown Prince of the Kingdom of Portalia. She responds politely and asks about his purpose. He explains he came for the engagement ceremony and also wishes to speak with her. Eleonora and Isabella tactfully excuse themselves, leaving them to talk alone. In the carriage, he says she is completely different from the rumors. He mentions the less than flattering stories her brother once told. She coughs awkwardly, unsure how to respond. He jokes that if he had known, he should have sent a marriage proposal. She silently prays the emperor never hears this. When she enters the room, she is delighted to find Theodore waiting for her. The siblings embrace warmly, expressing how much they missed each other. She happily shares about her life in the empire, saying everyone treats her well. She then invites Theodore to have tea with her and Roland. Upon hearing Roland's name, Theodore instantly becomes displeased. She asks in confusion whether they are not good friends. Theodore recounts with a stern face the hunting competition from 2 years ago. He had planned to capture a deer alive as a gift for his sister, but Roland beat him to it and killed his prized quarry. Charleone gently urges him to let go of this old grudge. Theodore excitedly reveals an even more infuriating part. The man who stole his gift actually wanted to propose to her. Charleone calmly points out that since the letter was never sent, there is no need to worry. Theodore finally lets it go and agrees to have tea with Roland. However, tension still fills the air when the three sit together. Roland deliberately brings up that Theodore once spoke ill of her. Theodore hurriedly explains he was praising her for being too excellent. Charleone helplessly interrupts their childish argument. Roland suddenly wonders why people without flu symptoms also consume eldernight berries. Charleone explains it is to boost immunity and prevent illness. Roland is glad these berries are very affordable. Theodore feels proud of his sister's knowledge and wit. Then Roland recognizes the rooibos tea they are drinking. Charleone is surprised he can identify tea from the east. He smiles and says Portalia can still obtain eastern goods despite its closed borders. She happily admits it is a gift from His Majesty. Theodore watches his sister smile and suddenly realizes parting is near. She comforts him that he can often visit as an envoy. Theodore says sadly that an envoy's activities are limited. Roland suddenly jokes that she still has a chance to change her mind. Charleone secretly feels relieved no one else heard this. Watching them argue again, she decides to keep them apart in the future. The next morning, sunlight streams in. Charleone wakes in his arms. She turns and meets his drowsy eyes just opening. He apologizes, saying she was already asleep when he came to see her last night. Then he asks about her meeting with Theodore and Roland. Sensing his jealousy, she quickly praises him as the most charming. He holds her tight with satisfaction and asks about her unfinished words from before. She recalls the confession she never got to make. She hesitates for a moment and decides to wait until the engagement ceremony to confess. Seeing Charleone burrowing into his arms, he suddenly feels a bit shy. Then he immediately gets up, saying they should have breakfast. After servants bring the meal, he carefully cuts the bread into pieces. He insists on feeding her himself, leaving her flustered. As she reluctantly eats, jam gets on his fingers. He naturally licks off the sweetness and says she is so sweet. She hurriedly finishes eating to stop him from feeding her more, but he laughs and picks up the pudding to feed her again. She finally gives in, secretly feeling the sweetness of being fed.